Throughout this course, we've been taking a look at some reports. Now what we've been doing is simply double-clicking and opening a report, which certainly is fine. But what if you want to do a little bit more than that? In this chapter, we'll take a look at how we can work with not only the pre-configured reports, but customize them a little bit by filtering, by finding information, by changing date ranges and those types of things. And we'll also look at how we can actually customize reports by adding and removing different features so that we get exactly the information we want, the way we want to see it. Unlike forms that are more geared towards specific transactions, reports are specific to a module like payroll or accounts receivable, and they're often filtered for a specific time period as well, like the current month or the last year. Sometimes we're looking for specific information on a large report, and that can be difficult. So there's a couple of things that we can do, or a couple of tools that are built into all of the pre-configured reports that come with Peachtree. One of those is to be able to filter a report. Let's take a look at one and show you how some of these work. Let's go to Reports and Forms, choose Financial Statements, and let's just take a look at a good old standard balance sheet. Now the balance sheet is configured so that it comes up and prompts you for a time frame, the current period, the current year, those types of things. You also at the bottom will see that you sometimes have options for printing things like page numbers. If you want to show zero amounts, show everything capitalized, which is kind of an accounting standard, and if you want it to be centered on the page. You also can choose the number of copies. We'll go ahead and leave these as they are and just say OK. The report gets generated and we get to see it on screen. Now, of course, there are all kinds of things that you can do, but the first thing I talked about was maybe wanting to filter a report. So as we said earlier, we can go ahead and choose that in that initial dialog box, or we can also bring those options back up. If we click the Options button, you can see it simply redisplays the dialog box we saw when this report was first configured, and I could change the period from the drop-down. Let's go ahead and close that out and look at some of our other options. If we click on Setup, this allows us to actually change the page setup. For example, right now this one is set to work on letter size paper, but in financial types of statements we might want to make it a legal size. So of course from the drop-down you will get all different kinds of pre-configured sizes, including letter and legal that we use most often in the States, or things like A3, A4, A5 that are more European in nature. I'll go ahead and press Escape to get out of that. You also can choose the source of your printer, Tray 1 or Tray 2 for example, that it would be coming from, and even the orientation, making it portrait or landscape, and changing the margins. We'll go ahead and cancel out of here as well. The next button on our toolbar says Hide, and this one's really confusing to people. But watch as I click this button. It goes from Hide to Show, and what it's doing is it's hiding the information about the company. So when it's displaying, it says Erlandessa Spa, Balance Sheet, September 30th, 2009, Assets. When I hide it, it only says Assets. So it's still giving me the names as they appear, but not the specific information. Why would that be appropriate? Well, sometimes you don't want people to be able to identify things from a balance sheet, so it simply is a matter of turning it on or off. I'll go ahead and click Show again. Probably one of the most important sets of buttons that we have in here is Email, Excel, and PDF. This is how we get information out of Peachtree and into a different format if that's what we need. We can click on the Email button, which will go ahead and launch our email client. We simply would address it the same way we would address any other email message. After clicking the Email button, it may take several seconds, maybe even a minute or so for it to open up. If your email client isn't already running, it of course has to launch the software, and that's what takes time. In my case, I'm using Outlook 2007, so I have a traditional Outlook message. I can address it to somebody, I can CC, I can BCC. It includes a subject called Erlandessa Spa Financial Statement Standard Balance Sheet, which I probably want to modify a little bit. you can see that it actually has attached it as a PDF file. So anybody who has the Adobe Acrobat Reader, which usually comes on most computers and is free to download, anybody who has that viewer can actually read this. It then, of course, also puts in a default message. This financial statement, balance sheet was generated on. It gives you the date and the company, and to view the attachment, it tells you about Adobe Reader and where to go to download it. So this is pretty simple and pretty sweet. All I would have to do is basically fill out the to, maybe modify the defaults, and then click on Send. Of course, I'm not actually going to send this message, so I want to go ahead and close this out. And it'll bring me back to Peachtree. The next option I have, and a very popular one, is to export to Excel. Let's try that one. This brings up a Copy Report to Excel dialog where we have all kinds of options. You can either create a new workbook or add it to an existing workbook. So maybe you have a collection of balance sheets for different companies, or maybe you do specific types of reports on a regular basis. You can simply append them to one Excel workbook instead of having multiple files. Naturally, if you tell it to append it to a file, you would then have to browse for that file. You have the option to use freeze panes, so your headers and labels are always visible, and to have your auto filter automatically turned on. I'll tell you that these two features don't work too well in 2007. They do work pretty well for 2003 or prior. We also can send the header to the page setup in Excel so it actually becomes a header, or we can show the header in an Excel worksheet. You have to pick one or the other of those. Let's go ahead and say OK and see how this one is exported. I just want to show you a couple of basic things here. First of all, that it does come in and everything looks like it's just fine. As I click, I can see that some of my entries are hard-coded entries as we'd expect, but some of them are also calculations. So when I come down to a total, for example, this actually remains a calculation. So this is a functional worksheet. It's not just pasting the information statically. I also can see that it has renamed the tab. It's called Balance Sheet at the bottom, so I don't have to do that. But at this point, it is separate from the Peachtree data. So I could now save this or manipulate it, copy it, do any of those things that I might want to do with it in Excel. Again, I'll go ahead and just close this out without saving the changes. And the last type of output we can get from a report is a PDF. I'll go ahead and click this one. PDF is the Adobe Acrobat format. It's a universal format that really captures things and allows people to view it on any platform with any operating system and any software. They just have to have the free reader. This is just a very quick conversion though. It's not full-blown Adobe Acrobat, so you're not going to have all of the options that you would normally have with the full software. But it does save it to a PDF format. You can choose the folder and the name that you want to save it to. And then, of course, you can email that, put it on a network, or share it as you see appropriate. I will not have it go through that process, so I'll go ahead and just say cancel. So we've been able to see how to work with options, the setup, how to hide and show the header, how to export information. What else can we do? Well, on the right-hand side, we also have a Find button. This is called the Find on Report. This is actually a pretty simple statement because our balance sheet isn't that complicated for our company that we've been building up so far. But if you had a lot of entries and you were looking for something specific, you can use the Find on Report. You simply click on the button and type in what you want to find. In this case, I want to find the word contribution. As with most types of find or search, you have all kinds of options to match the case, find whole words only. I'm just going to leave those at the default and say Find Next. And of course it does, and I can click Cancel to close this. And the word contribution is highlighted for me. So in a longer or more complicated report, this can save me a lot of scrolling up and down just trying to find what I'm looking for. These are all basic features that are available with virtually any report. We've been working with the balance sheet, but you'll see similar types of options in all of the reports that are available in Peachtree, even your own custom reports.